Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding and welcome back to my progress report series. This is a series where I take a few versions of a bodybuilder and compare them against each other to see where they may be getting worse, where they've stalled, or hopefully where they've progressed. In today's video, we are looking at a fan favorite, Patrick Moore. This past weekend, he was at the 2024 Europa Pro, and despite how much praise he was getting, he only landed in the 6th place spot. Now, Patrick does have this huge fan following because of the 2019 Mr. Olympia. At that show, he came in looking spectacular, and like his nickname, everyone thought he would be the future of open bodybuilding. He placed 10th that year, but everyone loved that mass with class look and looked for him to be the next big thing. Well, that was 5 years ago at this point, and he hasn't placed anywhere close to the top 10 at the Olympia, let alone qualifying for it in most of these recent years. Despite that, when his posing video came out, I saw many people saying that Patrick was his best ever. And I mean it, I saw several comments like that. So that was the main inspiration for this video. Let's really see the progress that has been made from 2019 to 2024. But I don't just want to stop there. I want to include a version in between that so we can get a more accurate picture. So I decided to throw in the 2023 Arnold Classic version as a buffer between these two versions. Again, just so we can get a fuller picture of the whole timeline. So let's jump into Patrick Moore's progress report to try to answer two main questions. Was he at his best beating his 2019 version, and has he progressed? Remember, if you guys like these types of videos and want to see more, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Alright, we're starting in the front double. Now we won't look at every one of his poses, but we definitely had to start here with the front double biceps. As I said in the intro, he was heralded as being the next best thing when he burst onto the scene, with that mass with class look. And just looking at the 2019 version, you can see why everyone loved him. His physique looked quite good. The entire pose is balanced, he had good legs, good arms, a great torso complete with a good vacuum, and his peak had him both really full and bubbly, but also really conditioned. Fast forward to the 2023 Arnold, and he was straight up last at that show. Now I didn't pick this version to make a joke, but in terms of the physiques he brought between 2019 and 24, this was actually one of the better ones, let me just say that. But you can see why he did so poorly at that Arnold. Maybe you can't see it a whole lot from this shot, but it will become even more clear when we go through more poses. But the first thing I noticed was the conditioning. I think he's a bit bigger overall, but a lot smoother. And it's not just because of the photo quality, he was not in condition here, full stop. Now I said he was a little bit bigger overall, but the legs at the same time kind of look a little smaller, but I think this has a lot to do with the lack of detail from the 2019 version. If you look leaner, you look bigger, and he is definitely not leaner in 23. This is really why I have 2019 winning just about every body part over 2023. He may have been a little bit bigger, but not enough to outrun the conditioning advantage from the 2019 version. I suppose if you want to say anything positive about 23, he did bring a slightly deeper vacuum and even wider lats. But now in 2024, the first thing I have to mention here again is conditioning, but this time it's for a good reason. He doesn't pop as much in 2019, but keep in mind this 2024 Europa Pro version's lighting was hot garbage. But legitimately, I do think the 2019 peak was a little bit better than 24's. Of course, the lighting helps though. Now his condition is pretty close to 2019. He may not be as full, but he's pretty dry, pretty separated, and so on. And he definitely beats 2023 in conditioning. But the second major thing I noticed about the 2024 version were the legs. And if you didn't know this, Patrick actually tore his Achilles, I think in late 2023, and that has to be one of the worst injuries I could possibly imagine. That sounds absolutely foul, but it clearly did affect his quads and the calves too, which I don't care too much about, but it is a telltale sign that pushing his leg days and leg gains obviously has been pretty tough for him, because both of those things, the quads and calves, have regressed. I don't even necessarily think he's even bigger in the upper body. I think he's actually the smallest here out of these three versions. So on a real stage, this pose would probably place the 2023 in the back just because the conditioning is way too poor, but against the 2019 version, I would definitely have that version at the very top over 2024 in a lineup. We're going to skip the front lat because it would basically be me saying the same things as I did in the first shot, so now we're going to the side chest. Now I didn't have a pick for the 2023 Arnold version, but I just had to include this pose. I think this is one of the most important ones to understand what happened to Patrick. Everyone recognized that he had pretty good size for his shape, but they also recognized that in order to compete in the modern era, he would need a little more size to hang on with the big boys. So with that in mind, this should be a shot that really improved if he was focused on the feedback. The side chest is all about thickness and completeness for the side, so we should see some more gains here, but we don't. In the upper body at least. Oddly enough, his legs are actually bigger in 2024. He has more hamstring drop now and sports some glute feathering. 2019 did have some deeper separation between quad and ham though. But in the upper body, it just looks like 2024 downsized, which is probably what actually happened. Everything on 2019 is bigger and pops out more. From delts, triceps, biceps, they all pop more, but you know, that could be the glaze, the lighting, and things like that. But the pecs are definitely smaller now in 2024. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Less thick, less detailed, and just less good. And from an overall perspective, he looks less muscular than he did in 2019. He was just so much fuller, and yes, probably a little bit bigger back then. This is one shot that 2019 is indisputably better. Now, like the side chest, I thought the rear double was going to be one of the most important poses to include in this video. It's a good indicator if he's been improving his weaker areas. In 2019, he was solid, but to jump up to the first call out, he was going to need thicker legs from the rear and a thicker, better back. But all the tools were there. The insertions on the back were already really good, and his legs from this point would have been a tremendous starting point to really pack on the mass. So he wasn't exactly a blank canvas here. He had good things going for him. He was more like a coloring sheet. He just had to fill it in. His pose was already good in 2019. He just needed more. Well, in 2023, there is just no way that version was better. He doesn't even look bigger here like I've said in the other shots. He looks pretty much the same in the back, and he really is pretty similar in the legs too, but with the condition, he's even worse here. So 2023 across the board is just a strict downgrade. Now here is something I can finally say was better on Patrick in 2024. It's the back. He is tilted away from the camera, so we can't get the full extent of it, but typically this is one area that does age pretty well for a lot of guys. The back tends to just get thicker as they continue lifting heavy weight for years on end, and the muscle maturity always shows up more in the back poses. Now his conditioning in the back isn't as crisp as 2019, but look at the lower back through the traps. There is definitely a lot more thickness there. And even though he's turned away from the camera, I would say he's definitely posing wider now, even if he didn't truly get wider. So either way, that's a plus in my book. If you pose better, you got better. As for the lower body, however, he definitely regressed. He's sharper in 2024 compared to 2023, but still a little smoother compared to 2019, and he's smaller. Again, the calves definitely got a bit smaller, and the overall girth to his thighs did as well, and he didn't have a lot to spare as is. With that, I think he beats 2023 and would in a lineup as well, but the 2019 version would reign supreme just narrowly if you threw all these versions into a lineup with other guys. His back got better and is its best in 2024, but the overall balance is really rough, and that conditioning wasn't as good as 2019. So again, in a lineup of other guys with these two versions, I would probably pick 2019 out of that lineup. But make no mistake about it, this is one area that Patrick has truly gotten better in. Another pose I just had to include was the abs and thighs, as I wanted to see just how well Patrick still holds up in a shot that he was beating even the biggest guys in. And really, he has held up pretty well for the most part. Right away, I would put that middle 2023 version last out of the bunch, just because conditioning is really important in the shot, and the other two clearly had better conditioning. The legs are big, but that's really all you can say about this version. Is it still good? Absolutely, he can beat a ton of guys on this shot, and I do mean a lot. But when you compare him against himself, where he's usually 10 out of 10, then you start to nitpick, and then you realize this version was definitely the weakest. Now between 2019 and 2024, I can bet by now you know what I'm going to say. And yes, the 2019 is just an upgrade over 2024, but not by too much. Again, we are really nitpicking here. He'd have no problem dispatching them in the shot. But between his previous version, 2019 has a little better legs, but they look really good here in 2024. There's actually really not much of a difference, besides how he's posing him, so that's actually a big plus. I'm sure someone even say the 2024 version's legs are better. However, there are some more differences upstairs this time around. Overall, he just used to be bigger and fuller. His lats used to be wider, which made his insane taper even better. Again though, 2024 is already fantastic, but also the abs did pop out more in 2019. All in all though, those are nitpicks like I've said several times now. From 2019 to 2024, this is actually one shot that's pretty much 90 to 95% of what it used to be, and it was already so good. And now we have our final pose. Like the side chest, I felt I had to include the most muscular because this is a shot that can expose Patrick. It's called the most muscular, and while Patrick is known for shape and aesthetics, he's not known for being the most muscular guy, quite the opposite. Again, it's like the rear double. Can he improve a shot that never had been that good for him in the past? Well, actually, when you look at the 2019 version, I think I should change my verbiage a little because although he will get outmassed in a top lineup, this was a pretty good most muscular. Everything is there, and sure, he doesn't have big Rami or Nick Walker level of size and freak factor, but he brings all the body parts and details. He is compensating a lot with that 3D look. He's not a mass monster, but that fullness and separation forms an immaculate illusion. This is why, although the 2023 version is probably roughly the same size, if not a little bigger, it still appears smaller. When the separation is less defined and the details just aren't there, he's just okay. It's still an okay pose. It's not amateur level exactly, but he's not playing the size game, so he needs to play the detail game. So bigger or not, 2019 is the better version in every way. Not just on detail, but also looking bigger. The legs are better, the abs are better, the delts and arms are much better, and so is the chest. 2023 doesn't really bring the size nor the polish that Patrick thrives on. Now, unfortunately, 2024 is even smaller than 2019 and smaller looking than 2023, but the details are back up to a pretty good level. He's a little more defined on the upper body compared to 2023, but the legs are where he stepped his game up the most over that version. So honestly, even though the legs should be worse here compared to 2023, I prefer 2024. In fact, they're actually fairly close to the 2019 version. Just don't look at the calves. So all in all, this is a shot that definitely has hasn't gotten better, and now he's trading off. In a full lineup with the added size, I may even prefer 2023 and be more apt to pick that over the other competitors. However, against himself, he is better in 2024 compared to 2023. And maybe those extra details in 2024's version would help him stick out in the lineup. Overall, I do say the lineup scenario is a draw as to which version would be better suited, but 2023 is better than 2024 when you compare them against each other for the added size. But in every single scenario, 2019 is definitely the best. He has the most roundness, the most detail, the best balance and flow, and he's the most muscular looking there. Now that we've seen all the poses, what do I think about those two questions I posed at the beginning of the video? Was this his best version, and is he improving? Let's go ahead and start with that second question and work backwards because it basically answers the first. Is Patrick Moore improving? Well, it does depend on a few things. For one, it depends on where you place the baseline. Is he improving from his 2023 versions? For sure. The conditioning aspects alone make this recent Europa Pro version probably make this his best showing since the beginning of 2020. Now, to answer if he's improving also depends on what you're looking at exactly. In terms of conditioning, yes. Again though, from 2020 on, 2019 was more conditioned. But if you look at the back, I think he's improved that over his entire career. He was even better than in 2019 by a little bit. But overall, muscle to muscle, when you average everything together, I wouldn't say anything else or in total he's really improved that much. I would say he hit a low point in terms of progress somewhere between 2020 and now, and he was actually regressing. So yes, he has since gotten himself out of that hole, but is he at his peak? Well, that would answer the first question, did this past weekend see Patrick Moore's best version? I have to say no, but a big victory for Patrick is what I'm about to say here. This was his best version of the past few years. This is actually why I picked the 2023 Arnold version as part of this comparison. That was part of his slump. Still though, it was a decent version for what he brought in these middling years, but it was still part of this downwards trajectory he had going on. And he beat that version. He probably would have beat most of his other semi-recent versions easily if they had been in the comparison. I would say he is now on par with like his 2020, 2021 packages. They were good, but not everything he needed, and he definitely wasn't improving on that great 2019 package. And that's the unfortunate thing. It's so obvious that 2019 was and still is his best version, by quite a margin, because he was the best that year on every single metric, from size to conditioning. So yes, he's out of his recent slump with his most recent package, but he still has a lot of work to do if he wants to even beat his peak or perhaps surpass it. Keep in mind though, we've been saying this for like 5 years now, he needs more size. That's been the main thing we've all said to Patrick. And as long as he keeps the lines in check, if he added that size, he's going to be a very, very tip-top guy. But he's never done that. In fact, he did the opposite for a few years, only getting worse until just now this past weekend. And that's a very troubling realization for Patrick's future. I don't really want to speak on this too much though, because I do a lot whenever Patrick is brought up, but let's just think about it. If he could have added the size by now and gotten better, why hasn't he yet? He's 40 years old if I'm not mistaken, but I saw conflicting things online, so at minimum, he's just a year or two shy of 40. And while bodybuilders do tend to get better into their late 30s and 40s now, it's almost never because they're adding size. It's usually because they built a lot of size early on in their careers and they refine it over time. Patrick is not in the position to do that. He needs size, so he's playing catch up. He can refine and outcondition his old versions all he wants, but the main criticism will remain the same and has remained the same for half a decade. He needs more size. He's gotten himself out of that dark period in his career and has overcome a terrible injury very, very well, I may add. So he's improving upon older versions, some of them. So in a way, I would say Patrick Moore is back. But that doesn't mean a whole lot because before the slump, he wasn't doing massively well, but he was still on the up and up. But as far as surpassing his previous best version, he hasn't done it yet. That 2019 Mr. Olympia version, that 10th place finish, still remains as his career high. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. What do you think about Patrick Moore's progress? And do you think we'll ever see Patrick surpass his 2019 version? And if we do, what do you think that's going to do in the Pro League? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. By the way, if you guys are in need of some high quality supplements and want to support the channel, be sure to head over to Arms Race Nutrition. Then at checkout, be sure to use my code Project10 to get 10% off your entire order. That's code Project10 at armsracenutrition.com. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
I know I will go so far. Oh, I'm gonna have my name in the stars. Set my goal up high and do what I love. Gotta get that Lexia, gotta get that Lexia.